What's going on, sci-fi fans? My name is Ben and welcome back to another episode of Sci-Fi Wednesdays. We are jumping in here today, guys, on the Raider ATST that we're creating from the Bandai 148 scale ATST model kit. So one of the nice things about Bandai kits is they always go together just with a level of meticulousness that I have just really not seen. From their Gundam kits to their Star Wars kits, a lot of them just go together without really much trouble. Everything makes sense, all the parts and pieces hide other seams, so you really don't have to do much sanding. But for the most part, if you're just building something fun out of the box, you throw the parts together, throw a little wash on it, and you actually have a very nice looking model. Now what we're going to do though is we're going to start off here and go step by step and really review a lot of the parts and pieces here on the first couple of steps. And what I wanted to go ahead and try to do today is to build up the majority of the lower part of the kit, so the legs and that little small hole. Now what we're going to do first though is I'm going to just start off and we're going to jump into a quick time lapse, and I'm going to just assemble both legs and that little mini hole where the neck and the legs attach into. Once I have all that completed, then I'll come back and I'm going to try to go ahead and string some cables up through those legs and into the base. So let's go ahead and get started here and see what we can do. This is going to be fun.
This is movement.
Alright everybody, we are back and I'm just putting the last finishing touch here on the leg, and I gotta tell you, the level of engineering here on Bandai kits always surprises me. They just work, you know, everything fits together where it should be, and for the most part I didn't have any trouble with any part. I'm gonna go ahead and just add on a few of the little detail parts here on the leg, and I just kind of want to get a feeling of what this looks like and how it all finishes up, because I'm gonna have to go ahead and take apart a good chunk of these legs and then that little mini hole right below the neck. I'm gonna have to go ahead and take that all apart to see how I'm gonna fit wires up through the different areas. That's gonna be the hard part. The soldering should be pretty easy, but it's gonna be trying to fit those wires up through the different parts so that they're hidden and they just kind of work naturally into the aesthetic of the model. That's gonna be a little bit of a challenge. Now, quickly off camera, I went ahead and I pulled apart the hull right here where the legs attach. Wanted to go ahead and open that back up and see just how much room there is in there, because I have a couple of ideas. The first idea I want to go ahead and try is seeing if I can bring power up through each of the legs into this little base right here, and then I can splice it in and power the two LEDs. We're going to have to figure out how to get the wires from this little mini hole through the neck, which is this little part right here. It should be easy enough to go ahead and just open it up. You know, we don't really see a lot of the bottom part of this or the top part, the little ball and socket joint. We don't really see any of that. It's covered up by the turret and it's covered up, buried inside this little hole. So I think would be okay to go ahead and kind of open up each end and see if we can't fit some wires through. I'm going to go ahead and use a pin vise. I'm going to use my X-Acto knife. I'm going to use my flush cuts. And we're going to go ahead and remove a lot of the locating tabs and a lot of the inside supports for this plastic piece. And again, you're not really going to see the very ends of this neck piece. You're not going to see it. It's going to be hidden, buried in the hole, and also buried up in the turret. So you're really not going to see any of that. So we can be pretty aggressive by taking a lot of plastic out from inside and also from the top and bottom. Now on the inside, we have 3 locating pins, one on top, one on bottom, and then a very large diameter pin right in the middle. So all of that can be reworked, and we should be able to go ahead and open that up enough to fit some cables through. Alright everybody, just quickly off camera, I decided to go ahead and attempt to string one cable up through the left leg. And this is what I've come up with. We start here on the bottom of the foot, poking it straight through the foot and then going up and behind the actual leg, up into, I guess, the calf part, through the calf into the right side, and then up into the thigh part. Of course, that means we have to go ahead and make sure that we have enough wire for movement, because this does flex, as you can see. So I went ahead and I doctored up the area inside there, removing a lot of the supports, and then poked a hole through the inner part of that thigh and then right around that connection point into the hole. That was a lot of kind of routing and drilling, but as you can see, it's pretty well tucked away. You don't really see a whole lot of wiring sticking out, and I wanted to kind of have a little bit of the wire exposed so that it would look a little bit more organic, as if maybe it's supposed to be there. So now we have to tackle the other side, and I thought I would go ahead and just kind of run you through a little bit more detail of how I did it. I'm sure there's better ways to do this, but this is how I came up with. And we're not going to do a time lapse or anything because there's a lot of little intricate parts and pieces here, and I'm just going to talk about it and walk you guys through how it all kind of went together. So here I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole through the left side and the right side into that center hole. Now that's going to be where my power is going to terminate, and it's going to connect then to the 4 wires for the LEDs. So that should be easy enough. On the left leg, that's going to be the negative power cable, and the right leg is going to be the positive. We're going to go ahead and drill a hole down through the top of the foot as far back by that joint as possible. That's going to allow us to fish that red wire up through that opening, and then we can jump back behind the leg and go up the back, at least so that way you don't really see it and they're nicely hidden. Once that's all opened up, I want to make sure that the cable doesn't snag if I'm moving the foot, or if any of the parts are just kind of shifting around. I don't want to snag the cable and break it, because these are just ribbon cables and not like they're very strong. Now I want to go ahead and match as much as I can the left side. So the right side is going to be a mirror image of the left side. And we're going to go ahead and again bring that cable up through the bottom of the foot, and then we're going to go ahead and try to keep on the inner portion of the leg, try to be as sneaky as possible, fiddle that around so that we have the cable as hidden as we need it to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and start taking apart the different areas here on the calf. I'm not sure what these are called. I'm just kind of calling them as what's closely resembling an actual leg, and I'm going to call this the calf. I don't know if that's really what it is, but that's what I'm going to call it. Now the calf itself is made up of a center section with 2 armor plates on the right and the left side. So we're going to go ahead and take the innermost plate and we're going to drill a hole at the very, very top of this at this little indentation. With my pin vise, I can poke a hole right through that up into the inside of that armor plate. And then you're not going to see the cable. You're just going to see a little bit of it going up into that area. Now, once that's all nicely strung in there, we can then turn our attention over to the front end of that joint. And that's going to be the hardest part because that is the part that moves. That's the part that needs enough of the wire in there so that it can articulate and it's not going to snap the wire or loosen the connections or do anything like that. So I went ahead and I was very careful to go ahead and open up and cut out a lot of the supports. Yeah, you're kind of cutting out supports, but at the same time, you don't really need it. These parts are not really going to be moved around. I'm not going to be play with this. It's just going to be set up in my display case. Every once in a while, I'll flip the lights on to see it and then I'll flip it off and just leave it there. So it doesn't have to be as robust, but it does have to be strong enough and careful enough so that the cable routing is neat and tidy so we don't snag it and we don't rip it. Now, taking the wire from the calf up into the thigh, again, my own terms, we're going to have to go ahead and again open up that joint. And there is actually quite a bit of room. There's a ball and socket joint that pivots in itself and it actually works very, very well. So we're going to just use our pin vise and we're going to drill a single hole. We're going to ream it out a little bit at an angle. So when the cable comes up through the top of that joint and it enters into the thigh area, it's going to have a nice, easy route. So it's not going to have any sort of snags or 90-degree angles that it could tear or rip the cable apart. And this is what we have so far. As you can see, we have the red wire and we have the black wire for positive and negative. And we have the neck here that I've opened up a little bit of a hole there. It's not big enough. We need to go ahead and open up more of that. But this at least gives you an idea of how I kind of want this to look. And again, I'm trying to go for a little bit more of an organic feel, as if these cables are actually part of the model kit itself. And they're going to be painted, so you're really not going to see them too much. Right now they're red and black against that gray. You can totally notice them. But once I get everything kind of painted and hopefully weathered down, you're not really going to notice them. So that's fine. Now, once I am satisfied with this, we can go ahead and open up a little bit more on the bottom part of the hole. And then we can make sure that we're not going to pinch the wire and we're going to have enough clearance to feed in 4 wires because we have to have 2 wires per LED. That's how I know how to do it. I'm not an expert in electronics by any means, but this is how I've kind of figured out how it might work. Now, as I mentioned, we have to go ahead and fit 4 cables from the hull up through the neck into the turret. 2 cables are going to be for the small little spotlight, and then another 2 cables are going to be for the red light, or at least the main turret light. So we're going to have to go ahead and figure out how best to kind of work this out. And I think I've come up with a good idea. We're going to take this neck and we're going to open up the top and the bottom. We're going to cut off any supports that are molded into the plastic that we just don't need. We're going to remove the top and the bottom locating tabs. We're just going to keep the center locating tab, and that should be fine. And then we're just going to feed in a pair of ribbon cables on either end of that so that we have 4 cables. I'll show you what I mean when I get closer to that area. But I'm going to go ahead and clean out both the top and the bottom here to make a very nice channel for all 4 wires. And then we'll string them up and we'll see how it looks. So now we're going to take 2 pairs of wires, and this is going to be just kept solid. We're not going to undo them. They're not going to be loose. We're going to keep them as pairs, and we're going to put one on the right side and one on the left side. That way they're kind of split in the center by that big large pivot, which acts as a separator between the 2 pairs of wires. Once we get these kind of set in here, we can then place them together, and hopefully I've cut out enough plastic so we're not really going to pinch any wires, and they're going to be able to be moved around like forward and backward, just in case I need more or less wires. So let's go ahead and put these together, and we're going to see how it lines up. Yeah, not too bad. I don't think I'm pinching any wires. They seem to be pretty flexible in there. So then down through that opening into the hole, we'll just snap this neck into place. And there we go. So we have our 4 wires going from the neck into the hole. And then down there, we can go ahead and flip it over and we can solder all the connections together so that we have power for those 4 cables up inside the turret. Again, this is kind of my master plan. Who knows if it's going to work? I think it's going to work just fine, but I won't really know until I get everything quickly soldered up and then we can test. We'll see if everything lights up. So now let's go ahead and flip this over, and we're going to go ahead and solder all of the positive cables to the 1 positive lead, which is the red wire, and then all of the negative cables to the negative lead, which is the black wire. And that should go ahead and power our LEDs. Now I'm also going to go ahead and trim down the black and the red wire. I have extra wire and I've left a lot on both ends of each of the legs. So if I need any more, I can go ahead and I can just cut and pull more through. Now I can go ahead and just strip those wires out, and we're going to go ahead and solder them all together. Now, just so I keep track of everything, I did make a quick wiring chart. We've got yellow and orange, yellow being positive, orange being negative. We've got white and purple. White is positive, purple is negative, and then red and black. And of course, red is positive and black is negative. So all of the positives are going to go together. All of the negatives are going to go together. That should work just fine. So let's go ahead and quickly, I'll just solder these up. Don't forget to put on your shrink tubing though, guys. Make sure to put that on before you solder. We're going to go ahead and do all of that. Get these all attached. As you can see off camera, I went ahead and I soldered up all my connections. So now I have one red wire that goes to both of the positives. I have the one black wire, which is negative, going to two negatives. And as you can see, we have the small and the large LEDs. I wired them up temporarily and they work. So I'm very happy about that. Now what we're going to have to do though is I don't want the cables kind of wiggling around and pulling at those connections. Even though this is not going to be moved a whole lot, I'm going to go ahead and secure these down with some basic hot glue. It's not going to react to the plastic. It's not going to damage anything. And we're just going to go ahead and glue these down with some hot glue so that they don't move around a whole bunch of places. That way we can put everything back together. And I think we should be in a good position to go ahead and just kind of leave it for right now, do some research and figure out what to do for the turret. Now with those wires secured down to the inside of the hull, we're going to go ahead and place all the little parts and pieces that we had on before, just to make sure we have everything back in place. And that's the nice thing about Bandai kits. You want to take something apart, you just remove a couple of pieces and the thing comes apart. Sometimes you have to be very careful though with those locating pins. Sometimes they do break off. But in this case, it's not that big of a deal because I can always just glue it. Because again, this is not meant really to be played with. This is just for a display. And here we are, guys. This is as it stands right now. Our ATST is standing on two legs with all the wires and cables sticking out through the neck. And as you can see, we've got the small LED. We've got the larger 5mm LED. And I think what we can do now is just give it a quick test, make sure that our connections still work. As long as they do, we'll be in good position to go ahead and continue next episode with the turrets. Let's give them a quick test. Yep, as you can see, they still work, so I am happy. We're going to go ahead and just call it quits for today. And guys, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more research. Next time we have to come on back and we have to go ahead and work out how all of these are going to go up into the turret. So that means we have to figure out where the spotlight's going to go. We have to do some scratch building on those guns to make them look a little bit cooler. And then of course we have to figure out the red glow of the main turret light. So that's going to be kind of interesting as well. I had a couple subscribers mention that maybe I should just get some red acetate and just put that up in the windows. I'm actually considering doing something like that. I'm not really sure. We're going to mess around with some ideas and see what we can do. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us today. And guys, I'm really happy about how this has turned out so far. Hopefully you guys are digging how the wires are coming together. Everything works and I'm happy. So I think next episode we'll go ahead and focus on getting all the lights up into the turret, figure out scratch building on the guns, figure out the attachment of that side spotlight. I think it's on the right side of that turret gun. And then we'll just see how we can get that main 5mm LED up in that turret. So we will see you back here on the next episode of the Raider ATST here on Sci-Fi Wednesdays. Episode 3 is coming at you next week. So until then, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll see you back here on the next episode of Sci-Fi Wednesdays Raider ATST. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.